Yeah, thank the Lord for it. It's just an amazing place to work. Spent a lot of time with it. Spent a lot of time on the room, and I wanted to talk about how to get great results with what you have. One of the things that I noticed and learned is placement of monitors and placement of acoustic panels play a humongous role. A lot of guys are talking about the Owens Corning 703. Okay, that panel right there, you can buy Owens Corning 703. Man, that fan is just blowing right on me. It's freezing. Hold on a second. So you can buy Owens Corning 703. Look online. It's fiberglass insulation in a sense. You can wrap it. Those are the DIY kind of acoustic panels. I would highly recommend, one of the things, if you're not real familiar with bass trapping, bass traps, if you want to get a decent sounding room, what you need to do is buy a mirror. Okay, buy a mirror, place the mirror on places inside your room, parallel to the wall. What I mean by parallel is like you're hanging it on the wall. Don't start moving it around. I started to realize this when I first got into acoustic treatment. I'm not by any means a professional. I do consider myself a professional mixing engineer, and you can be the judge of that. But when we're talking about acoustics, there's so many different dimensions in rooms, and this is a long time coming for an acoustic engineer. If you're looking into buying a multi-million-dollar building, I would highly recommend getting an acoustic professional. So I'm not trying to replace that, but I'm saying people that don't have that kind of capital and want to make their room sound a little bit better. One of the things that you got to realize is wherever your speakers are placed in the room, there's a reflection point off the first walls. So that signal is going to hit the wall, and then it's going to come back to your ears. What it's going to do is not let you listen to reverbs as well, not let you listen to delays, not let you listen to frequencies, because it's going to jumble it up a little bit, and your speakers aren't going to act like they're supposed to act inside that room. One of the keys that I wanted my room to sound like is, I've been engineering for so long, so I know when something's reflecting. I've heard it without a reflection, and the image just sounds amazing. When it has reflection points in the room and those reflections are getting altered in some sort or some way, and they're bouncing off of one wall, hitting another wall, and coming back to you, what's happening is you're actually hearing something that you shouldn't be hearing. So in sense, when we say acoustically treat a room, we want it to get as to the truest signal as possible. We're hearing what the speakers are representing, not what the room's representing. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people don't get that, because if you start mixing, let's say 120 hertz in a room, where 120 hertz is like non-existent, you'll start boosting it a lot. You'll take the mix out to your truck, and your kick drums will sound like they're breaking your speakers. They're just way too loud. It's really weird how this works, but in order to get the greatest mixes, you're going to have a room that's very true to that mix. So when you play it back, you're like, yeah, that's what's going on in here. And we're talking subtle changes in frequency response. I mean, no room is absolutely perfect, but there's a lot out there that are really close. So one of the things that you got to realize when we talk about room acoustics is, I think, getting and taking care of your first reflection points. How do you do that? Quite simple, man. And I'm going to do this, and you don't even have to. I don't have to go around the room and show you. I mean, I can just show you exactly what you do. Get a mirror. This is a mirror that I was handed down. It looks like a troll wishing well, but it was a mirror that I was handed down. There's a camera. Now, if that was the wall, if I had this, and say I'm the wall, and you're the listening position, what you're going to do is move this across until you see a speaker. You see what I'm saying? Now, you're obviously not going to see a speaker because I don't have any speakers behind you. But once you find that speaker, that's where a panel needs to be, and it actually works. I mean, it's not rocket science. It sounds dumb, but it's absolutely true. You put it on that wall somewhere, and in my case, it was right over here. I'll show you. This mirror's about to fall. But I think this is a useful video for people, honestly. But if you look at this wall, right there is the main reflection point. Then right directly parallel with the speaker is another reflection point. So that reflection point, I actually found out that I've wrapped my room in Allerex, because I do like a very flat sounding, not a lot of reverb kind of room. I did this on accident in a sense. I bought this stuff on Craigslist, 1 inch. I mean, I just definitely wrapped the room. But I still have reflection points. In the back corners, those are bass traps. What do bass traps do? You got to realize that bass traps are a very, 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 very dense material. Let's talk about that bass trap. First of all, let you see what it looks like. I can get one in my hand here. No biggie. This is a bass trap. I'm going to explain to you what a bass trap is, because the reflection points, if you've noticed while I was over here, that's where I placed the mirror. Right in front on that couch. I just set it there, and you could see from my chair that it was reflecting that speaker. Here's the next thing. Now, I'm not claiming to be Ethan Weiner from Real Traps. This guy's an amazing person, and you guys can learn a lot from people like that. But I am claiming to be common sense wise with this stuff. Here's a bass trap. Let me explain something to you. Bass, in a sense, has an omnipresence to it. This is a bass trap from Owens, actually Allerex. And the reason that I chose the 703 for the wall is because it stops reflection. That's like the perfect case for Owens Corning. The other thing about Owens Corning, it's not a good bass trap. I found that out. I learned from some professional, acoustic engineers. It's not a great bass trap. It doesn't go down far enough. It doesn't grab the frequencies we want. When you have reflection points stopped in a room and you don't have bass traps taking care of the bass in the corners, I would highly recommend this if you're ever going to acoustically treat your room, and I wish somebody would have told me this when I first started with this stuff. Get a lot of bass traps. You can't over bass trap your room. I've finally come to the conclusion it's not the bass trap. If you put 100 bass traps in your corners and your room still sounds bad, you have a problem with the reflection points, or you have a problem with certain frequencies in that room building up in certain spots. And you can take care of them. There's more than the reflection points that I have taken care of, but it depends on what are you really trying to do. A bass trap, all it does is, if you notice, it's pretty much a corner piece. But what they do is they take and they actually put a sense of diffusion on the front. Diffusion, if you sat here and yelled into each individual section of this, they all have a different tone to them, a different representation of the frequencies. So when bass goes into this piece, what's really going to happen is it's going to trap the bass in a way that is a lot more efficient than most. It's the way that they put this together. The foam that they're using is not just regular foam that you get out of packing foam or packaging foam or whatnot. It's the fact that this stuff actually works. They put a lot of time and effort into making these things, and that's why they are pretty expensive. When you put these in the corner, what seems to happen is the bass response of the room, the way that the bass actually sounds in a mix, actually sounds accurate. Bass is one of the hardest things to get accurate in a room, because let's face it, you put bass in the trunk of a car, it doesn't matter what you're listening to, it's going to be the most present in the car. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you have two 12s in your car, just because they're 12s, the fact is that bass is going to amplify itself, and it's going to carry a distance. That's why when you hear a car, a dude that loves hip-hop music, you're going to hear him like 15 blocks away, because bass travels quite a distance. Now when we're mixing music, we don't want it to travel like that. We want it to stay in the room, but we don't want it to affect the mix. When you have a big bass frequency going out, 12 feet or something, coming back and amplifying itself and resonating all over the place, you tend to listen to the bass, and either A, you got too much bass, or you got too little bass where it's actually not even there. And what starts to happen is you actually start to mix the bass totally wrong. You take it out to your truck and your bass is all distorted, and that's one of the major things in mixing. So acoustic treatment, really learn just early reflections, and I think from there then you can start to weigh out the different 1-inch, 2-inch, 4-inch panels, what these panels do, and you can really get fine in this stuff. But let me put this back in the corner where it belongs, and I'm going to get into one more thing. So at the end of the day, a lot of guys will sit here and talk about acoustic treatment, and the reason, I had a gentleman sort of come at me in a way, and I didn't take offense to it, but he was right. Acoustic treatment is a humongous role, and I never did a video on acoustic treatment. But along with the acoustic treatment, one of the reasons that I purchased the speakers that I have, the NS10s, and why you see them in a lot of major recording studios and mixing engineers use them a lot, is because NS stands for natural sound. When they made these speakers, I don't know if they even knew what they made. The thing is they're so natural sounding, there's nothing that's altering. When you try to buy let's say a home theater system, and you $600 on some speakers and you decide to use those for mixing. The problem with that is they have their own way of working with frequencies. They might amplify certain frequencies in certain points on that curve, and what you're doing, you're listening to this amazing sounding song, and then you take it, once again, you take it out of the studio and you're like, okay, that sounds horrible. It's because you're not getting a true representation of what was going on. The goal of a great monitor is a flat as it can be response with a lot of natural hint throw time. What I mean by the NS10 is the room doesn't alter the NS10 as much as a lot of speakers. A lot of speakers today have a real heavy bass response, like the M Audio. The Yamaha 80s that they even made were actually a little bit more glorified, and the highs sort of sounded like high definition, and the lows just sort of sounded big. A lot of these speakers are going for that, but now you start getting into, you know, the Focals and some other great speakers and some really high-end mastering speakers that cost more than my house. Yeah, you're getting a true reference. I mean, what you hear is what you get. But at the end of the day, the best $100,000 speakers aren't going to sound good in a poorly acoustically treated room. You're still going to have problems mixing and mastering. But when you get the two combo together, now you're listening to things that a lot of people don't get to listen to. And the next big thing in the chain, and this was just a simple fill you in kind of video. You got great monitors. Here's another thing about monitors with the Allerex, by the way. You see my monitors? These moped stands work, okay? They work, but if you just buy these and you have no acoustic treatment, what the heck was the point of that? These separate it. What that does, real quick, let me explain that to you. It separates it from this desk. A lot of guys, even myself, I don't have $5 to spend on a desk at this point. So, you know, I go up and I buy the desk that's gonna sit stuff on it. I'm not, you know, I wasn't into that. I want the gear first, and a lot of you guys out there are just like me. So the NS10, separating it from the desk, what happens if I don't separate that from the desk? I've heard it. Up in the 120 to 220, 300 hertz range, there's this resonance, there's this presence where it's actually smearing the entire 120 to 400 hertz range, really. And you can't really hear what you're doing. So when you boost it more, the wood starts amplifying it more, and you're like, something's wrong, because it's actually messing with the bottom of that speaker that has its own sound. When you take the Allerex moped and you put it up, a lot of people don't even tell you this, why you have those. It's not just to make them look pretty. It's the fact that now the sound is hitting the foam and it's stopping the sound, or it's stopping most of the sound, so you don't have that problem with your desk. That's very important if you have like a real cheap desk, or you have a desk that has hollow points in it. It's very, very important to get some of those. They're not that expensive. They're $40, and they will make your references a lot better. Trust me. So moving on, you have monitors, you have acoustic treatment, bass traps, Owens Corning 703. They have rigid. You can use what is it, mineral wool, I think. But everything, just study yourself into it. Say, oh, okay, this is what this reflects, this is what that reflects. But you really got to understand frequencies, you got to understand dynamics, and you got to understand a lot of things about the mixing process in order to be a great mixing engineer. I'm not saying that just because you have these that you're going to be a great mixing engineer. You're just going to be better if you're already good. Do you see what I'm saying? So study the art of mixing, and then these become a necessity to you. And the last necessity, and this is one that you guys can work up towards. I'm not getting on video to say, hey, you need this. If you don't have this, you're not going to succeed in the music business. It's not that. But if you want the highest end presentation of your music, when we mix music for people, this is what happens. We get involved with a great room, great monitors, and we just go at it. I didn't want to say great engineer, because then that sounds cocky and everybody's like, this guy. But Symphony IO Rosetta 800. Let me zoom over. I used to have the 88,000 in the Big Ben clock. I'm not going to get all the way technical on this, but knowing what these things do, these are a necessity in a high-end studio. The reason they're a necessity is because when we're working with digital audio, analog is the analog world. Just because you have analog, everything before it hits a computer is analog. Okay, do you understand that? A lot of people don't get that. Oh, well, you're using analog if you have a preamp. You're using analog if you have a microphone. Once that analog information becomes digital information, your sound quality is dictated on what's doing that job. So a lot of guys will just buy, I've seen it happen, and I did it myself when I first started. You'll buy, you know, a $2,200 preamp, a $1,000 microphone, and you'll buy a $400 interface. The company that made that interface knew for a fact that it wasn't going to be the best. They knew that you weren't going to have the best conversion because they can't possibly make $1 and continue to do this business without charging, you know, the prices they charge. When you get into stuff like a Symphony IO, Lynx, Lucid, Lavery, Mytek, Benchmark, Prism, Pro Tools HD and the HD Omni series and all that good stuff, you're going to step up a humongous step in sound quality. What do I mean by sound quality? A lot of people don't get this. Sound quality, to me, is a visual representation of an audio piece. What I mean by that is, when you sit in front of the speakers, it almost sounds like you're actually there when you have high-end converters. The depth, the clarity, your reverb sound better, your plugins sound better, your microphones sound better, your everything sounds better. So what is the importance of a high-end interface? And why? When would I buy one? I wouldn't buy one if you're making music and you have a set budget. I would highly recommend, you can have all the things that I've mentioned in this video. You can have all of them. But at the end of the day, you really got to understand the process and the mixing. You know, you got to understand the mixing process, because mixing is the art of taking this and having these tools. They're like a big microscope to, you know, to a person like myself. I can hear everything. And when I start adjusting and fine-tuning sounds and I start placing them in this stereo field, I know for a fact that this is going to do a job better than a lot of, probably 99% of things on the that are on the market right now. And when I sit back and I listen to it, I know when I bounce it and print it, sometimes it actually just, it represents it to a point where it's amazing to me. It's fun to listen to. One of the greatest things about music is the depth of music, the clarity of music, the definition of music, and being able to hear everything in a song. That's the mixing process. But once again, having great acoustics to hear mix, having great monitors to hear what the room and what everything is doing in the mix, and then having great converters or a great interface inside of that. That's the trio. That's like the holy trinity of recording as far as doing this and getting professional results. So my name's Doug Jenkins. iMixandMaster.com is my website. It's a very simple website. You hit contact on the site and you contact me and say, hey man, I want you to mix my music, because honestly that happens a lot and I appreciate it, because that's what I do. And you know, I'm very flexible with people. We can work something out with you, and I just want you to, I can't stress enough, until you've heard your song mixed by somebody that actually mixes music, it's night and day between what you're doing at home. And I wish that everybody could just take one song and get it mixed and spend the money and listen to it and be like, okay, that's crazy. Because everybody that's mixed this, got a song mixed or recorded a song professionally or mastered, had their song mastered, you understand what I'm talking about. And if you get it done by a person that's well qualified to do it, it's an amazing difference. I get to hear it every day. So I'm out. I gotta get going. It's parade day up in Tucky, Ohio. It's Wadsworth, by the way.